This is brought to you by the Kansas City Business Association, located at 1601 East 18th Street, Suite 200F.
What's up, Kansas City? I'm your host, Glenn Bryan Frizzell. Today we are filming in the historic Lincoln Building right here in the 18th and Vine Jazz District. Today's special guest is the current Superintendent of Kansas City Public School District, Dr. Mark Bedell. Thank you for joining us here today.
Well, thank you, Glenn, and thank you, Kansas City, for trusting me to take on this job.
Monumental job. First off, we'd like to welcome you to Kansas City and the Kansas City Public School District. You'll hear us on Cascade Media Group echo the sentiments that education is an important factor in the growth of our communities. I just want to open up by wishing you success and kind of talking to you about the success and challenges of the current school year. We are approximately 3 weeks into the school year. In August, about 6,000 people turned out for Summerfest. That was a success, I assume. The district has moved into a new home on 29th and Truce. Challenges, a bus problem. Left KCP students stranded on the first 2 days. You were quoted as saying there was a 2-week adjustment period for the start of the school year. What is your overall assessment for the jump start?
Yeah, you want to have as smooth of a start as possible. And I'm one of these type of people that value every instructional minute. So we have 180 days with our students. And if we don't have the ability as a school system to make sure and to ensure that everything is in place so that our kids can arrive to school on time, eat breakfast, make sure that every instructional minute is captured, yeah, I have a problem with that. And I think I have to own it as a superintendent to ensure that there are checks and balances in place so something like this will never happen again. It sets the tone for the year, and I know we had gotten off to with a strong amount of momentum. The things that we did in terms of the Back to School Festival, the baseball game, our convocation we had with all 2,200 of our employees, our people were truly inspired and pumped up. And so we want to make sure that all of those other factors that may not have anything to do with looking at things from an instructional lens, but they actually do have an impact on instruction, that we have accounted for all of those issues. And so transportation is one. I think school systems tend to have some minor issues that normally come with transportation, but buses not picking up students and it's happening for multiple days, that's a problem.
How's the overall feedback been, Dr. Bedell?
It's been positive. It's been positive because for 2 reasons. One, I stood out in front of it and I owned it. And I admitted and I told parents that this is unacceptable. It's something that we will focus on and will work on so there's not a repeat. The other piece is that I was impacted as a parent. My kids, I had to take my kids to school the first couple of days of school because the bus didn't come and pick them up. So I think for parents, they also were able to say, well, the level of urgency that he's expressing, he's personally impacted by this too, so he truly understands how we feel, as parents. And so I think those 2 things really helped out. A lot of parents submitted comments really thanking us for how we communicated, how we stood in front of it, and most importantly, how we owned it.
I know one of your primary goals as superintendent is to determine a roadmap for successful schooling in an effort to obtain full accreditation according to the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. How are you starting off to accomplish it? Is it happening with the teachers in the classroom?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everything starts in the classroom. And so one of the things I told my teachers in convocation is, I want us to take a non-traditional approach to how we educate our kids, because what we know is that we serve a lot of kids who come from the urban core. The conversations I've had with students who have experienced a lot of trauma, there's many variables that cause our kids to already come to school behind. If we start the school year out approaching our kids and telling them what they can't do, you really set a tone in a negative way, because they've already been told over years what they can't do. Let's take the approach of starting off our first day of interacting with kids and telling them what they are permitted to do in these classrooms. And let's take a democratic approach to how we will allow for kids to establish what the rules are and what the guidelines will be in terms of how we behave and manage ourselves in an acceptable manner. And that's a different approach.
Thank you for that. Dr. Bedell, we've had several different superintendents within the last decade here in Kansas City, Missouri. Let's spend about 2-3 minutes getting a chance to know a little bit more about you. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? You grew up in Rochester, New York?
Yeah, I grew up in Rochester, New York. It's a struggling school system. I'm in a family of 8, and I'm the only one out of the 8 of us to make it past the 9th grade. And, grew up in a very poor scenario. I was a ward of the state. I dropped out of school. I failed on many different occasions, and those failures didn't ultimately determine my destination. A lot of people would not have made it out of the situations that I had to go through, but I also had positive people that came into my life, even, including some teachers in the 10th grade who were able to allow for me to lower my guards, and ultimately I began to flourish as a student, and it opened up opportunities for me to move on to go to college.
I'm just going to throw a little science out there. This is from the Journal of Negro Education, the fall edition from last year. James Ford, Martin Jones, and Joyce Alexander conducted a study. After-school interest, achievement goal orientation, and peers in a predominantly African-American school. The thesis real quickly says, as independent factors, prior work suggests that peer groups, out-of-school interest, and academic motivation can alter students' academic achievement. Now, growing up in Rochester, New York, what was there an after-school program? You mentioned you dropped out. What inspired you to say, hey, I can go on the FISC? And not just go on the FISC and stop, but say, I'm going to be a superintendent. I'm going to pursue higher education at Tennessee State, both HBCUs, by the way. But can you give us maybe 2 primary factors that
Absolutely.
stem in line?
One was sports.
Okay.
Let's be very clear. I was a gym rat. I played sports all year round.
Basketball.
I played basketball. I ran cross country. I ran track. And then the other one, once again, was positive people coming into my life. I mean, those 2 teachers made a difference, but I also had my guardians, Pat and Lewis White. These are my best friend parents, and these are people who were there for me. It was just good people. So having great advocates to come in your life when you need them, that makes a huge difference.
Did you play sports at FISC?
I did.
Do you still run?
I still run.
You still run? Okay,
we
man.
play ball. Right now we're moving it, but we've been playing at Central on Sundays at 1 o'clock, and it's been great.
We'll have to talk about Black Man Run KC after.
You said, do I still run? No, I run playing basketball. I ain't talking about full court run. Now, what you talking about? No, sir.
I'm a cross country person.
I used to be.
Okay. What was unique about your experience at FISC? We're talking about HBCUs now.
It was great. I mean, they nurture you. They don't want you to fail. There was a professor at Texas A&M by the name of Dr. Novella Carter. She had 6 kids, and she told me, she said she sent all 6 of her kids to HBCUs because she felt that they would be nurtured, they would get a high quality education, and then upon graduation from the HBCUs, they were allowed to go to Ivy League schools, Tier 1 schools, wherever they wanted to go. But FISC really did embrace me, and it gave me an opportunity to meet my wife. She ended up going into law school, got into Vandy, got into the University of Houston. Cost was allowed for us to make our way to Houston because it was a lot cheaper. But it's a university that has prepared a lot of us to be academically strong and to continue on with pursuing advanced degrees.
Now, you were the assistant superintendent for high schools, of which there are 25 in Baltimore County. How old were you when you got that position?
Well, I started in Houston. I moved up and was actually in an assistant superintendent position in Houston. I was a high school principal for 3 years at Booker T. Washington. And then in Houston, I want to say at the age of 34 or 35, I became a school improvement officer supervising high schools there. I did that for 2 years, and then I moved into Baltimore County as an assistant superintendent for 4 years.
What was your experience like in Baltimore County?
It was awesome. It was awesome because it gave me an opportunity. It was a whole different experience, right? First of all, Texas, we determine what Texans learn. That's just the way that it is there. We don't do Common Core. We don't do the union stuff. I mean, it's a an at-will or right-to-work state. You move into Baltimore, and it's a whole different ball game. I mean, Maryland is, you have unions, you have Common Core. There's just a whole different mode of operation with schooling that, had I not moved to Baltimore County, would probably have made it even more difficult for me to make the transition that I've made into the superintendency position here in KCPS.
Okay. What are your initial thoughts? I know you toured Kansas City. Have you seen different things in different schools that you would? I mean, each school has its unique character. What have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, each school does. They have different characteristics. I'm big on culture and climate, and I think that the message that the school conveys to kids will go a long way with ensuring that our kids are successful, that they feel safe, and that they feel welcome, that the building is theirs. And so I have an expectation when I go into schools that I want buildings to look a certain way. I want our kids to be highlighted. I want us to show that we appreciate and value our kids, and that everything that message conveys to anybody who walks into this building is the number one thing that's important in our school is kids. We care about our kids. And so as I'm going in schools, I'm asking those questions. I want my kids to be happy. I want them to have rich experiences. And that's why I'm extremely proud of the principal that I have over at Central, the young man that I've hired at Banneker, the gentleman that I've hired over at Southeast. Northeast, we have a young lady over there. And I think we have people who are here where children is the number one core value for them. So I want to make sure that we're embracing our kids, and I want the culture and climate that I see in a Lincoln. I want that culture and climate in every single one of my schools, and we have a lot of that happening.
I think we have time for about 3 more questions. We want to talk about, you mentioned something in your statement that's on the website about primary stakeholders. And we know that it takes a community to actually be real successful, not only students, teachers, but you have parents, you have alumni, and you have community leaders who play, and school board. You have to, how do you navigate between all those elements to ensure that, everybody's getting a fair equity in the state?
I mean, that is the most difficult part of the job, Glenn. It is. And what I try to tell people is my primary goal and why the board hired me was to come here and be an advocate for kids. So every conversation that I have with people is centered around advocacy for kids. How can you all help support us? How can we ensure that as a school system we're being transparent with you, we're being honest with you? And part of what I've done to really have that balance is I found a way in my 100-day plan to clearly articulate the time that I would spend with the board, the time that I would spend with the community, the time that I would spend with students, time I would spend with advocacy groups. And I think if you go onto my website and you look at how my strategic plan, my 100-day plan is being updated, you will see that I'm targeting all of those areas and making sure that I'm meeting the needs and making sure that everybody has an opportunity to have voice with me as I'm getting through these 100 days.
Do you keep up with my Brother's Keeper initiative that President Barack Obama put in place? Does that have any viable resources to our community building?
Oh, it does. That's one of the big things we're going to be focusing on over at Northeast High School in Banneker. Those are the 2 target schools that we're targeting this year for that initiative. Fortunately for me, I was very involved in that process. I was flown in to Austin, Texas to present in the moderator town hall meeting for the MBK symposium. So I'm very involved in that. And so we are working with Daryl Davis and my school leadership team to make sure that the district continues to be a huge participant in that initiative, because that's near and dear to my heart.
We've worked with Mr. Davis before. I would like to ask you, in Rochester, New York, how many people off your block made it to, I wouldn't say, maybe a doctor's degree, but at least pursue some higher education? How many people would you say took that journey semi with you?
Not many. Honestly, I can't. That lived on my block, the people that I ran with on Parcells, I can't say of any. I can't speak of any. I got people that I went to high school with that I know have gone on to do some good things, and some of them are principals and some of them are executives. But in the neighborhood that I grew up in and the people that I used to hang out with, no.
Wow. Now, is there a big clique of educators, not just I would say African American male educators? We've heard Dr. Stephen Perry talk at UMKC. Puff Daddy just put together a charter school. There's another school named after Ron Brown in D.C. Is there a particular type of fraternity, kinship among educators who work in the higher levels of academic?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. I mean, and at the level that I'm at right now is more around interacting with superintendents. You have to keep in mind only 6% of superintendents in this country are African American, right? And if you break that down, that's the truth. And let's just think about the state of Missouri. I believe the state hired 53 superintendents this year. I'm the only African American. At least that's what I saw in the training. So there's not many of us, making it to this level in this country. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of collaboration. There's a lot of just talking to each other and supporting each other and just making sure that we have a support system so we can continue to be examples for our youth that are coming up behind us.
Now, Dr. Bedell, we'll give you the last words here. Is there anything that you want to say to our community, to the students?
Sure. I mean, I would tell our students that the same thing that I said to all 700 students over at Northeast yesterday is that as your superintendent, I have your back. I have high expectations for you. I don't believe in us allowing for you to utilize your current situations as a crutch so that we don't properly educate you or that you don't properly hold yourself accountable. My expectations is that if I can make it through the situation that I've lived through, you all can do the same. And you all have to help us by coming to school, doing your part, being respectful, owning your own learning, holding us accountable for educating you properly. And if you do that, I promise you, there are much brighter days out there for those of you who are living through some of the things that I've lived through. Our community, I want to share this with you. As I finish this 100-day plan, and we're going to get out and do some listening and learning tours, that information is going to be coming out. We're going to look to engage you in our strategic planning process. We're going to encompass the master plan and what we've done with that, but we want to create a plan that's 4 or 5 years that will truly be community generated, that will guide the work we'll do over the next 4 to 5 years.
Now, Marvin Collins, the educator of Westside Prep in Chicago, said you can pay people to teach, but you can't pay them to care. Thank you, Dr. Bedell, for caring. Check out more video online at www.whatsupkansascity.net, and we hope to invite you back on the show, Dr. Bedell, sometime soon so you can update us on the progress.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it, Glenn. Thank you.
I'm IFBB Bikini Pro Cat Williams, and when I'm not working out in the gym, I'm searching the web on Cascade Media and What's Up Kansas City. So make sure you check them out.